Ethan walked along the neighborhood's potholed sidewalk with his old hoodie thrown over his shoulders and his heavy backpack banging against his back. That weight wasn't just from school books, but also from the accumulated tiredness of those who divide their day between studies and work. The neighborhood didn't give any respite. It was always noisy. Children playing tag in the narrow street, loud music coming from an old radio, and the screams of a mother calling her son home. All mixed with horns from rushing cars. He climbed the steps of the building where he lived, leaning on the icy handrail. Inside, the smell of burning food mixed with the sound of loud TVs and muffled discussions behind closed doors. He passed by Donna Marta's door, who said excitedly, "Hi, Ethan." He waved back, but didn't even stop. "I just wanted to get there soon." The door to the small apartment creaked as he entered. It was a cramped place, with 3 rooms that barely accommodated his mother, Lisa, and younger sister, Emily. Lisa was on the sofa, with her cleaning uniform wrinkled and her eyes closed, but she woke up when she heard her son. "Are you here now, Ethan?" Her voice was soft, full of tiredness. "Yes, Mom, I stayed late at school," he replied, dropping his backpack next to the couch. But his eyes couldn't avoid the envelopes piled up on the table, overdue bills. The worst thing was the power outage warning. Ethan looked away, going straight to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As soon as he finished, Emily appeared in the hallway, with her school uniform rumpled and her hair disheveled like she had slept too much. She was holding a math notebook. "You're going to help me with this, right?" asked the girl, showing the book full of fractions. "Sure, give me a minute," he replied, pulling out a chair at the small table. Lisa got up slowly, going to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The sound of the can opener cutting through the silence provided the soundtrack as Ethan tried to focus on the numbers Emily scribbled. They ate dinner together later, in silence, with simple dishes of rice and beans. Lisa served a little more rice on her son's plate, as if trying to make up for something. He thanked her with a shy smile. When they finished, Ethan went to the small window in the room, looking at the world outside. The dim glow of the streetlight flickered, reflecting how unstable their lives seemed. He felt the weight of responsibility, the desire to help his family, but he saw no way out. The next morning at work, Ethan fought sleep as he organized shelves at the grocery store. The doorbell rang non-stop, customers coming and going. It was then that he saw an elderly man struggling to climb the subway stairs with a huge suitcase. Ethan hesitated. He was exhausted. I could just walk right past it. But something inside him made him stop. "Do you need help, sir?" he asked, approaching. The old man looked up, surprised. "Ah, son, that would be great." Ethan held the suitcase and step by step helped the man. When they reached the top, the elderly man sighed in relief and smiled. "Thanks, kid. Not many people stop to help these days." Ethan smiled, ready to say goodbye, but the man took a paper out of his pocket and handed it to him. "If you ever need something, look for me." "I might have something for you." Ethan stood still, staring at the paper with a phone number and an address. Was it just a kind gesture or something bigger? He didn't know, but he felt like his life could change from that moment on. Ethan put the paper in his pocket, not knowing exactly what to think. It wasn't the first time I'd heard promises that were too good to be true. As he returned to work, his mind was spinning. Did that gentleman, Mr. Carter, really have something to offer? Or was it just another one of those conversations that went nowhere? Back at the grocery store, the doorbell rang non-stop, and Ethan barely had time to breathe. He was arranging cereal boxes on the shelves when Ryan, his cocky, joke-filled co-worker, approached. "Hey, Ethan, what was that talk with the old man yesterday? Did he hire you as a baggage handler now?" Ryan laughed, but Ethan ignored him. "I didn't have the energy to argue." The shift dragged on, and Ethan just wanted to get home. At the end of the day, he found Lisa in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup. She looked tired, but smiled when she saw him. "How was your day, son?" he asked, while Emily did her homework at the table. "Normal," he replied, but took the paper out of his pocket hesitantly. "Actually, I met a gentleman today. He gave me this, said he had an opportunity for me." Lisa looked at the paper suspiciously. "An opportunity? Ethan, you know how people can be. I don't want anyone to take advantage of your goodwill." "I know, Mom. But what do we have to lose? If it's real, it might help." The atmosphere in the kitchen became tense. Emily, even though she didn't quite understand, looked up from her notebook and asked, "Is this something that will help Mom?" Ethan sighed, trying to hide the weight of the decision. He wanted to believe that this could be a solution, but the fear of disappointment held him back. That night he lay awake, staring at the paper on the table. The name Mr. Carter and the phone number seemed to glow in the dark. The bills stacked next to him were a constant reminder of the daily struggle they faced. The next day, during breakfast, Lisa broke the silence. "If you think you should go, go. Just let me know where you'll be, okay?" Ethan nodded, relieved at his mother's permission. He put the paper in his pocket, filled his lungs with courage, and left. The path to the address on the paper seemed endless. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if his doubts were an invisible suitcase. When he arrived at the place, he was surprised. It wasn't a grand building, but it wasn't what he expected either. A simple office with large windows and a glass door. He took a deep breath and entered. The receptionist, a smiling young woman, greeted him. "Are you Ethan? Mr. Carter is waiting for you. Come on up." He swallowed hard, feeling the nervousness rise with him as he headed up the stairs. Upstairs, Mr. Carter was sitting behind a wooden table with some old photos on the wall. Beside him, a younger man who seemed to be his assistant was watching everything carefully. "Ah, Ethan, I'm glad you came," said Mr. Carter, smiling. "Sit down, please." Ethan sat down, not knowing what to expect. He tried to hide his shaking hands, but Mr. Carter seemed to sense his tension. "Let me explain, boy. I was once young like you, full of dreams, but without many opportunities. I see something in you. That's why I want to offer you a chance." "A chance of what?" Ethan asked, his voice almost cracking. "To work with me. I won't promise you it will be easy, but I can guarantee that if you put in the work, it will be worth it." Ethan looked at the man and then at the assistant, who nodded as if to say it was safe to trust. He didn't know what to do, but one thing was certain. This could be the only chance to change his and his family's lives. Ethan left the office with his head racing. The envelope Mr. Carter had handed him was firmly in his hand. Inside, there were details about the work, schedules, tasks, and something that looked like a simple contract. He still didn't know if it was a dream or just one of those things too good to be true. As he walked home, he felt the weight of doubts. Was he capable? What if that was just another frustration? When he arrived at the small apartment, he found Lisa washing the dishes, her movements slow and tired as always. Emily was on the couch, scribbling something in a notebook. "Mom," Ethan called, placing the envelope on the table. Lisa turned around, drying her hands on her apron. "I think this might be our chance." Lisa looked at the envelope as if it was something fragile, almost dangerous. He sat down on the chair and opened it slowly, reading the papers. His eyes narrowed, concern written all over his face. "Ethan, this looks really good. Did you read everything? Do you understand what they are asking for?" "Yes, Mom," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's not strange at all. It's normal, organizational and assistance work. He said he will teach me everything, and we need to try." Lisa was silent for a moment, staring at the papers as if they could give her some magical answer. Finally, he sighed and looked at his son. "If you believe in it, go. But please be careful." Ethan smiled, relieved, and kissed his mother's head. "I promise I will." That night, while Emily slept soundly in the next bed, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind was full of expectations and fears. He knew this was more than just a job. It was a chance to get the family out of that jam, to give his mother and sister some peace. The next morning, he got up early, got ready carefully, and said goodbye to Lisa and Emily before leaving. "Good luck, little brother," Emily shouted with a huge smile. Lisa just hugged him tightly, her concern evident. Ethan arrived at the office at the agreed time, and Mr. Carter greeted him with the same warm smile as the day before. "Ready to get started, kid?" "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, trying to sound more confident than he actually was. "Excellent. I'll let Josh show you the basics today. He's the best we have here." Josh, Mr. Carter, was a tall man with a friendly smile and a calmness that put Ethan at ease. He started by explaining how things worked, organizing materials, serving specific customers, and even some inventory tasks. "It's nothing too complicated," said Josh as he showed the warehouse. "But it needs attention, and if you need help, just call me." The hours passed quickly, and to Ethan's surprise, he was enjoying the work. It was something solid, concrete, different from the chaos of the grocery store. When the afternoon came, he felt tired, but for the first time in a long time, it was good tired. Before leaving, Mr. Carter called Ethan into the office. "You did good today, kid. Keep it up, and I think we will have a bright future here." Ethan thanked him, holding back his excitement. On the way back home, he felt something new. It wasn't just the weight of responsibilities or late bills. It was hope. Arriving at the apartment, Lisa was waiting for him in the living room. "So, how was it?" he asked, hands clenched. Ethan smiled, placing the envelope on the table again. "It was good, Mom. In truth." Lisa sighed in relief, and Emily, curious, ran over to him. "Are you going to make a lot of money, Ethan? Shall we buy a new TV?" He laughed, ruffling his sister's hair. "Calm down, Emily, one step at a time." That night, as he was getting ready for bed, Ethan realized something important. He wasn't just starting a job, he was beginning a new phase of life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like something good was coming. The following days were intense for Ethan. He began to familiarize himself with the work, learning quickly from Josh and paying attention to every detail that Mr. Carter taught him. The tasks were simple at first: organizing stocks, checking inventory lists, and occasionally serving customers who came to the office. Josh, always patient, became a mentor of sorts to Ethan. "You're getting the hang of it," he said, patting the boy on the shoulder. "The secret is not to be afraid to ask. It's better to ask than to make mistakes." Ethan absorbed everything like a sponge, determined to prove that he deserved this opportunity. He knew it wasn't just about him, it was for his mother and sister, who depended on the little money he brought home. One afternoon, while helping Josh organize files, Mr. Carter appeared at the storage room door. "Ethan, can I talk to you for a moment?" Ethan swallowed, nervousness rising in his throat. He wiped his hands on his pants and followed Mr. Carter into the office. The man was waiting for him with a warm smile, but there was something serious in his tone. "I wanted to tell you that I'm impressed with what I've seen so far. You're dedicated, fast, and you have something that many young people your age don't have: determination." Ethan was speechless. It was rare to hear praise, especially from someone like Mr. Carter, who clearly knew what he was doing. "So I'm thinking about giving you more responsibilities. Don't worry, nothing you can't do." But I want you to know that I trust you, kid. Ethan smiled, trying to hide his emotion. Thank you, sir. I promise not to disappoint. When he returned home that night, Ethan felt a different energy. He was no longer just surviving. I was starting to build something. Lisa noticed the sparkle in his eye as soon as he walked through the door. You're smiling. That's a miracle, he joked as he set the table for dinner. It was a good day, he replied with a shy smile. Emily, as always, got straight to the point. Ethan, are you going to make more money? Will we be able to buy pizza this month? Ethan laughed, but deep down he felt the weight of the question. He knew the family needed more than a special dinner. They needed stability, something he was determined to achieve. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office earlier than usual. Mr. Carter called him into a meeting with Josh and two other more experienced employees. They discussed plans to reorganize inventory and improve customer service. Ethan listened intently, taking mental notes. He wanted to show that he was capable, that he lived up to expectations. At the end of the meeting, Mr. Carter took him aside. Ethan, I'm going to need you to accompany Josh on a visit to an important client today. You don't have to do much, just watch and learn. I think this will help you understand how we deal with our larger clients. Ethan nodded, feeling the nervousness return. It was a huge responsibility, but he was ready for the challenge. During the visit, Josh showed how to behave, how to listen carefully to customers, and ensure that all demands were met. Ethan realized that the job was much more than organizing inventory. It was about building trust and solving problems. Back at the office, Ethan felt like he had learned more in one day than he had in weeks of work. He thanked Josh for his patience and promised to do his best to improve every day. When he got home, he found Lisa napping on the couch and Emily doodling a drawing on the table. He sat next to his sister and looked at the paper. What are you drawing, Em? It's you, Ethan, she replied, holding the paper proudly. In the cartoon, a stick figure wore a tie and held a briefcase. You are our hero. Ethan laughed, but his eyes filled with tears. He knew there was still a long way to go, but at that moment, he felt he was on the right path. The days passed quickly, and Ethan threw himself headlong into work. The more I learned, the more responsibilities I gained. Mr. Carter seemed to trust him in a way no one ever had. Josh also continued to be an essential figure, guiding and encouraging the boy at every step. You're doing well, Ethan, Josh said one afternoon as they adjusted inventory in the warehouse. But let me give you some advice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We learn more when we stumble than when everything goes right. Ethan smiled, thanking him. I'll remember that. Despite progress at work, things at home were still difficult. The money was barely enough to cover basic expenses, and Lisa was still exhausted. She worked all day cleaning houses, coming home with her hands red and her shoulders hunched from so much effort. Emily, even though she was just a child, seemed to understand the weight of the situation. Ethan, she said one night while doing homework, do you think that one day Mom will stop working so much? The question hit home. Ethan wanted to say yes, that everything would get better, but he knew that promising that would be unfair. I'm trying, Em, he replied, pulling his sister into a hug. I promise I will do my best. At work, Ethan was surprised by a request from Mr. Carter. Ethan, I want you to lead a simple project. Nothing complicated, but it's a test to see how you do. Ethan froze for a moment. I? Lead? Yes, replied Mr. Carter with an encouraging smile. You are ready? I trust you. The project involved organizing a large delivery of products and ensuring that everything reached customers on time. It wasn't an impossible task, but to Ethan, it seemed like a huge leap. He worked hard, checking every detail and asking Josh for advice whenever he had questions. Delivery day arrived, and Ethan was a wreck from worrying. He followed the entire process, making sure nothing went wrong. When he finished, he felt a mixture of relief and pride. "Good job, kid," Josh said, patting him on the shoulder. "You have a future here." Ethan smiled, but reality pulled him back when he got home. The electricity bill was still on the table with the cut-off notice. Lisa was waiting for him in the living room, her brow furrowed. "Is work okay?" she asked. "Yes, it was a good day," he replied, sitting down next to her. "But I wish I could do more." Lisa held his hand, squeezing tightly. "Ethan, you already do a lot. Just for you to keep fighting is more than I could ask for." That night, as he looked out the apartment window, Ethan felt the weight of all his responsibilities. He knew he still had a lot to do, but he also knew that step by step he was building something better for himself and his family. The next morning, when he arrived at work, Mr. Carter called him into the office. "Ethan, I've heard good things about the project you led," he said with a smile. "I want to offer you another chance to grow. How about working directly with me on some negotiations? It's an opportunity to learn something new." Ethan's eyes widened. It was a proposal he never expected to hear. "Of course, sir, I accept." "Excellent. You will learn a lot," Mr. Carter replied, standing up to shake his hand. "And remember, Ethan, success comes from effort and honesty, and you have it in spades." As Ethan walked back to the warehouse, he felt something new rise within him. Hope. For the first time, he believed he could change his family's future. Ethan began working directly with Mr. Carter, and the change was immediate. He began to see how decisions were made, how businesses worked, and most importantly, how trust was essential in that world. Carter made a point of explaining each step, as if he saw something in Ethan that needed to be polished. "Ethan," he said during a meeting, "business is not just numbers and contracts. They are people. If you know how to deal with them, the rest will flow." Ethan listened, absorbing every word. He knew that learning was something that no one could take away from him. But as his professional life began to progress, at home, things seemed increasingly tense. Lisa was still worried. For her, Ethan's new job was still unknown. "You spend so much time there," she commented one night as she folded clothes on the couch. "What if they're just using you, Ethan? I've seen it happen." "It's not like that, Mom," he replied, trying not to sound irritated. "Mr. Carter is different. He trusts me, and I trust him." Lisa sighed but didn't say anything else. She knew Ethan was trying, but the fear that he would be tricked consumed her. On the other side, Emily looked more hopeful. One afternoon, while drawing at the kitchen table, she looked at Ethan and asked, "Do you think we'll move one day to a bigger house?" Ethan stopped, staring at his sister. He wanted so badly to say yes, but the reality was still harsh. "Maybe, Em. If I keep working, who knows?" At work, Ethan was challenged even more. "Mr. Carter asked him to conduct a negotiation with a small supplier. It was simple, but to Ethan, it felt like a trial by fire. "Do you think I can do it, Josh?" he asked, the day before the meeting. Josh smiled. "Of course you can. Just be honest. Listen to what they have to say and don't be afraid to ask." The meeting was a mix of nervousness and learning. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility, but he followed Josh and Mr. Carter. In the end, he managed to seal the deal, and Carter seemed more than pleased. "Good job, kid," he said, patting Ethan on the back. "Keep it up, and there is no limit to what you can achieve." But it wasn't all praise. Ryan, his old grocery store colleague, now worked at a nearby warehouse. and didn't miss the opportunity to tease Ethan when he happened to see him. "Look, Ethan, becoming a boss now." Ryan laughed with an acidic tone. "Be careful not to forget where you came from." Ethan ignored it, but the words moved him. He knew he was changing, but not out of arrogance. He just wanted to give his family a better life. At home, the bills continued to pile up, and Ethan decided to talk to Lisa about the situation. "Mom, maybe it's time to think of another solution. Maybe sell some things or look for help." Lisa crossed her arms, her face tense. "I'm not going to ask for charity, Ethan. We can handle it." "It's not charity, Mom. It's strategy. We need to think long-term." The conversation ended without a solution, but Ethan knew he needed to do something. He began working longer hours, staying late at the office, studying ways to increase his impact at work. He wanted to impress Mr. Carter, but he also wanted to make sure his mother no longer had to carry so much weight alone. That night, while Emily slept, Ethan lay awake, looking out the apartment window. He was tired, but determined. Life was still difficult, but for the first time, he felt like he was building something worthwhile. The days at work began to intensify even more. Ethan was now a household name within the office, and Mr. Carter seemed willing to test him with increasingly greater challenges. Even with the responsibilities weighing on him, Ethan felt he was on the right path. It was a mix of pride and pressure, but he preferred that to the feeling of stagnation that had accompanied him for so long. "Ethan," called Mr. Carter one morning as he checked some documents in the warehouse, "I need you to take control of an important contract. I know it's big, but I trust you can handle it." Ethan swallowed hard but nodded. "You can count on me, sir." The project was a large-scale delivery for a demanding client. The responsibility fell entirely on Ethan, who would now need to coordinate multiple teams to ensure everything ran smoothly. He stayed up nights, planning every detail and double-checking everything. Josh, as always, was there to help him. "Remember, Ethan, the secret is not to do everything alone. It's about delegating and trusting the right people." Ethan followed the advice, but the pressure was still immense. At home, Lisa noticed the change in her son. He was more tired than ever, but he also seemed determined. "You're killing yourself at this job, Ethan," she said one night, as she placed a plate of simple food in front of him. "I just want to make sure this is worth it." "It'll be worth it, Mom," he replied, his eyes fixed on his plate. "I promise." Emily, as always, brought lightness to the moment. "Ethan, when you get rich, can you buy me a bike?" He laughed, ruffling his sister's hair. "First we pay the bills, then we think about the bike." On the day the contract was handed over, Ethan was a nervous wreck. He coordinated everything with precision, checking every detail until the last minute. When the job was completed flawlessly, Mr. Carter called him into the office. "Boy, you exceeded my expectations," he said with a genuine smile. "I'm proud of you." Those words were a huge relief for Ethan. He finally felt like all the effort was paying off. But life had a peculiar way of bringing new challenges. One afternoon, while returning home, Ethan found Lisa sitting in the living room with a worried look on her face. "A letter arrived today," she said, handing over the envelope. It was a notice that the rent would be increased next month. Ethan's heart sank. It was another blow in a long list of difficulties. "Don't worry, Mom," he said, trying to sound confident. "We'll find a way." But inside, he felt the weight double. He started working more overtime at the office, coming home late and leaving before everyone woke up. Lisa became increasingly worried about her son. "You need to rest, Ethan," she said one night. "Working that hard won't solve everything." "I can't stop, Mom," he replied. "I have to keep going." Meanwhile, at work, Ethan began to attract the attention of other employees. Some saw him as an inspiration, but others, like Ryan, thought he was finding himself. "Look, Carter's sweetheart," said Ryan, finding Ethan in a store near the office. "Do you think you're better than everyone else now?" Ethan took a deep breath, trying not to react. "I'm just doing my job, Ryan." "Yeah, let's see how much you can take," Ryan replied with a sarcastic tone. Even ignoring the provocations, Ryan's words stuck in Ethan's head. He knew he couldn't afford to make mistakes. His family depended on him, and the future seemed as fragile as the promises he wanted to keep. That night, looking at Emily sleeping and Lisa dozing on the couch, Ethan felt a mixture of guilt and determination. He knew he needed a bigger plan, something that could truly transform their lives, and for that, he would need courage to take the next step. Ethan woke up the next morning with the weight of everything he had been carrying for the last few weeks. The rent increase notice and late bills wouldn't leave his mind, but he refused to let discouragement take over. There was something about him that kept him going, even when everything seemed impossible. At work, Mr. Carter surprised him with a proposal that caught him off guard. "Ethan, I want you to accompany me to an important meeting with one of our biggest clients," said Carter, upon meeting him in the warehouse. But what would I do in the meeting?" Ethan asked, trying to hide his nervousness. "I want you to observe, learn, and if you feel confident, contribute. The best way to grow is to expose yourself to challenges like this." Ethan agreed, even though his heart was racing. He knew Carter trusted him, but being in a meeting with a large client was something he never imagined so soon. The meeting took place in a large office building on the other side of town. Ethan walked in with Carter, trying to hide the sweat running down his forehead. The client, a man named Mr. Walker, was serious, firmly spoken, but listened intently as Carter presented the points of the contract. Ethan observed every detail, absorbing everything like a sponge. In the end, Carter turned to him. "Ethan, anything to add?" The silence in the room was deafening. Ethan swallowed hard, but gathered his courage. "I believe the proposal is solid, but perhaps we can include a flexible deadline at the end of the contract. This could better meet customer needs." Mr. Walker raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Interesting. Good point, kid." Carter smiled, pleased. "That's why he's here." Ethan left that meeting feeling like he had won a battle. He knew it was a small step, but to him, it felt like a huge achievement. Carter complimented him on the way back to the office. "You have a bright future, Ethan. You just need to keep working hard and trusting yourself." But while things at work improved, the pressure at home increased. Lisa was becoming more worried about rent and piling up bills. One night, as Ethan ate a quick dinner before going back to reviewing documents, she sat next to him. "Ethan, I know you're doing the best you can, but I don't want you to overwhelm yourself. If something goes wrong, I don't know what we'll do." "Everything will be fine, Mom," he replied, trying to remain calm. "I promise I'll find a way." Emily, who was listening to the conversation from across the room, asked with her childlike innocence, "What if we have a bake sale, Ethan? Everyone likes cakes." Ethan laughed, but the idea of his sister stayed in his mind. He realized that he needed something more than a job to get his family out of that situation. Maybe it was time to think outside the box. The next morning, Carter called him into the office once again. "I have news for you, Ethan," he began, his tone calm but firm. "I want to promote you to a senior assistant position. It won't be easy, but I think you're ready for it." Ethan was speechless. The promotion meant more responsibilities, more hours, but also a significant increase in salary. It was exactly what he needed. "I accept, sir. Thank you for trusting me," Carter smiled. "You deserve it, kid. But remember, the work only gets harder from now on." Ethan came home that night with the news. Lisa looked relieved, but still worried. "This will help a lot, Ethan, but you can't forget to take care of yourself." "I know, Mom," he replied, "but now at least we have a little hope." While Emily played with her sketchbook, Ethan looked out the apartment window. He knew he still had a long way to go, but for the first time, he felt like things were really changing. The days after the promotion were the most intense Ethan has ever experienced. The new senior assistant position brought more responsibilities, more work hours, but also more visibility. He was now directly involved in important decisions and had the chance to show his potential in each project. Josh was still at his side, offering advice and support. "You're doing great, Ethan. Just don't forget to breathe every now and then. It's easy to get lost in all the work." "I'll try, Josh," Ethan replied with a tired smile. He knew he was trying harder than ever, but he felt like he couldn't stop, not while his family was still struggling to stay afloat. Despite progress at work, challenges at home have not diminished. Lisa continued to worry, and the rent increase was getting closer and closer. One night, as Ethan was trying to organize his finances, she approached him with a cup of tea. "You're carrying a lot of weight, Ethan," she said, placing the cup on the table. "I know you want to figure everything out, but you don't have to do it alone." "I need it, Mom," he replied, looking at the bills. "If I don't do it, who will?" Lisa sighed, knowing there was no point in insisting. She saw how determined her son was, but what worried her most was the lack of time he had for himself. Meanwhile, Emily, with her characteristic innocence, brought some levity to the moment. "Ethan, when you're the boss, will we be able to live in a house with a garden?" He laughed, ruffling his sister's hair. "We'll see, Em. First, I need to keep climbing step by step." At work, Ethan faced an even greater challenge. Mr. Carter put him in charge of a project that involved not only negotiations, but also supervision of the entire team. It was an incredible opportunity, but also a test by fire. "Do you think you can do it?" asked Josh as they reviewed the details of the project. "I'm not sure," Ethan admitted, feeling the weight of responsibility, "but I'll try." The project required Ethan to coordinate multiple teams to ensure everything was delivered on time. He spent nights reviewing details, checking lists, and making sure nothing was forgotten. The nervousness was constant, but he knew he couldn't fail. On the day of delivery, Ethan arrived at the office earlier than ever. Every detail was under control, and he followed the entire process closely. When everything was finalized, Mr. Carter called him in for a talk. "Ethan, you have proven once again that you are capable of handling great challenges," said Carter with a satisfied smile. "I'm proud of the work you've done here." Carter's words were a relief to Ethan. He felt like all the effort, all the sleepless nights were finally paying off. But the victory also brought reflections. When he returned home that night, he found Lisa and Emily waiting for him in the living room. Lisa smiled when she saw him, but her look still carried concern. "Did you do it, Ethan?" she asked. "Yes, Mom," he replied, sitting down on the couch. "But I think I'm forgetting something important." "And what would that be?" Lisa asked, surprised. "You guys," he replied, looking at her and Emily. "I'm so focused on work that I barely have time to be with you." Lisa walked over, placing her hand on his shoulder. "We're fine, Ethan. We just want you to take care of yourself too." Emily, always direct, jumped into her brother's lap. "We are proud of you, Ethan, but don't forget to play with me sometimes." Ethan laughed, feeling the lightness that only his sister could bring. He knew there was still a lot to do, but he also realized he needed to balance his dedication to work with time for his family. That night, as he looked out the window of his small apartment, Ethan promised himself that he would keep fighting, but that he would also find time to appreciate the things that really mattered. He wasn't just trying to change the present, he was building a future. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office more determined than ever. The conversation with his mother and sister the night before made him reflect on how to balance work and family. He knew he needed to keep pushing himself, but he also realized that success would only make sense if he could share his achievements with them. However, the work did not wait. As soon as he entered, Mr. Carter called him into a meeting. "Ethan, I have a proposition for you," Carter began, his tone serious. "I want you to consider becoming my right-hand man. It's a big step, but I think you're ready." Ethan froze. The proposal was more than he could have dreamed of, but it also came with a price: longer hours, more responsibilities, and perhaps less time for his family. I don't know what to say," Ethan admitted, his voice shaky. "You don't have to decide now," Carter replied. "Think calmly, but know that I trust you." Ethan spent the rest of the day deep in thought. He knew this opportunity could change his life and that of his family, but at the same time, he felt like he was moving away from the things that really mattered. That night, at home, Lisa realized that something was bothering her son. "What is it, Ethan? It feels like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders." "Mr. Carter offered me a bigger position," he replied, resting his elbows on the kitchen table. "It's everything I wanted, but I don't know if I'm ready to give up everything for this." Lisa sat next to him with a soft smile. "Ethan, you have always been strong, and I know you can do it, but you don't have to carry everything alone. We are here with you." Emily, listening to the conversation from the bedroom, appeared with her sketchbook. "Look, Ethan, I made something for you." She showed a colorful drawing where Ethan wore a cape and a badge. "You are our hero." Ethan laughed, excited. "Your sister always had a way of remembering what really mattered." He looked at Lisa and Emily and felt a rush of gratitude. They were the reason for all the effort, and he couldn't let them down. The next day, Ethan returned to the office determined. He found Mr. Carter in his office and sat down opposite him. "Sir, I have thought a lot about your proposal," he began with firmness in his voice, "and I want to accept it. But I need one condition." Carter raised an eyebrow, curious. "Condition? I need time for my family. I can't be the best at work if I don't have them by my side." Carter smiled, clearly impressed. "Ethan, that's one of the most mature answers I've ever heard. Of course you will have your time. I don't want you to lose who you are." Ethan left the office with one weight less. He knew he was entering a new phase of his life, but he felt like he was doing it the right way. When he got home and told Lisa and Emily the news, they both hugged him with pride. That night, as he looked at the small pile of bills on the table, Ethan did not feel despair. He felt hope. "I knew that step by step, I was building something worthwhile." And best of all, he had his family by his side. Ethan's first week in the new role was a whirlwind. He was now involved in more important decisions, attending meetings and leading larger teams. The workload was heavy, but with each new task, Ethan felt like he was excelling. Josh, always a companion, did not hide his admiration. "You deserve this, Ethan. It's good to see someone with their heart in the right place making it this far." "Thanks, Josh," Ethan replied with a smile, "but I'm still trying to adapt. It's more than I expected." "Trust the process," Josh said. "You are on the right path." Meanwhile, Mr. Carter seemed more satisfied every day. He often praised Ethan in front of other employees, highlighting his work ethic and determination. This, however, also began to attract envious glances. Ryan, the old grocery store colleague who now worked at another warehouse, showed up at a joint meeting and didn't miss the chance to provoke. "Look, the boss's favorite is here," Ryan said sarcastically. Does he carry all the company's hopes on his shoulders now? Ethan ignored it, but felt the provocation bother him. He knew he couldn't let this cloud his focus. In the days that followed, Ethan began to find a balance between work and family time. He made a point of coming home early at least once a week to have dinner with Lisa and Emily. On those nights, they talked, laughed, and Ethan felt how important this was to everyone. "So, Ethan," asked Emily one of these nights with a twinkle in her eye, "are you going to buy my bike now?" Ethan laughed. "Not yet, Em, but it is in the planning." Lisa, observing the scene, smiled. She knew Ethan was trying to do what was best for everyone, and that filled her with pride. But like every mother, she also worried. "Just don't forget to take care of yourself, son. Work is important, but it's not everything." "I know, Mom," Ethan replied, "but now it's my turn to make a difference." At the office, a new challenge arose. Mr. Carter reported that an extremely important contract was on the line, and Ethan would be responsible for overseeing the project. "This contract could take our company to the next level," Carter explained. "I trust you can handle it." The pressure was enormous, but Ethan knew this was his chance to prove that he deserved everything he had achieved so far. He spent the next few days working tirelessly, ensuring every detail was perfect. Josh noticed Ethan's intensity and tried to ease some of the tension. "You've done amazing things here, Ethan. Don't let the weight of this contract consume you." "I know," Ethan replied with a tired smile, "but I want to make sure there is no room for error." When the project was finally delivered, Mr. Carter made sure to call Ethan into his office. "Boy, you exceeded all expectations again. This contract will change the direction of our company, and you are a big part of that." Ethan felt a mixture of relief and pride. He knew there was still a lot to learn, but moments like that made him believe it was all worth it. That night, he came home with a surprise for Emily. A used bicycle, but in excellent condition. When she saw it, her eyes lit up. "Is it mine?" "In truth?" he asked, jumping with joy. "It's yours," Ethan replied, smiling. "You deserve it, Em." Lisa watched the scene with tears in her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt like life was changing for the better. Ethan knew there were still challenges ahead, but with his family by his side and the confidence that he was on the right path, he was ready to face them. The contract Ethan oversaw had a huge impact on the company. Mr. Carter made a point of highlighting this at an all-hands meeting. All the employees were gathered, and Carter, with a proud smile, talked about the recent success. "This was a team effort, but I want to recognize the leadership of someone who has proven to be a pillar for this company." "Ethan," said Carter, looking directly at him. Ethan was speechless as everyone applauded. Some colleagues, like Josh, seemed genuinely happy for him. Others, like Ryan, barely clapped, keeping a sidelong gaze. After the meeting, Josh approached. "You did well, man. You deserve all the recognition." "Thanks, Josh," Ethan replied, still a little embarrassed. "I just hope to continue living up to expectations." But promotion and success came with a price. The time he spent at work increased significantly. It was harder to get home early, and he missed nights with Lisa and Emily. When he finally arrived, it was often late, and the lights in the apartment were off. One night, Ethan found Lisa awake in the kitchen, staring into a cup of tea. She seemed lost in thought. "Is everything okay, Mom?" he asked, sitting down next to her. Lisa sighed. "I just miss you, Ethan. I know you're doing this for us, but I miss the nights we used to have dinner together." Ethan felt the weight of those words. He knew he was making sacrifices for his family's future, but he also knew he was missing out on precious moments. "I promise I'll make this better, Mom," he said, holding her hand. "I just need a little more time." While Ethan struggled to find a balance, Things at work continued to demand more from him. Carter invited him on a business trip, Ethan's first. It would be a unique opportunity to expand your knowledge and open new doors, but it would also mean more time away from home. "It's going to be an amazing experience, Ethan," Carter said, "and it's only for a week. You can do it." Ethan agreed, but the thought of leaving Lisa and Emily bothered him. The night before the trip, he sat with them in the living room. "I'm going to need to travel for a few days," he began, looking at both of them. "It's something important for work," Emily pouted. "But you're hardly home anymore, Ethan." Lisa placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "He's doing this for us, honey. I promise that when I get back, I'll spend more time with you," Ethan said, trying to calm them down. The trip was a success. Ethan attended important meetings, met new contacts, and saw firsthand how big business was conducted. Carter made a point of highlighting him on several occasions, saying that Ethan was the future of the company, but deep down, Ethan missed home. When he finally returned, he was greeted with tight hugs from Lisa and Emily. "You look tired," Lisa said, worried. "Everything is fine." "Yes, Mother," he replied with a smile, "and I'm sorry I stayed away." That night, Ethan made a point of sitting with them at the table and talking about everything that had happened. It was a simple moment, but one that reminded him why he was fighting so hard. It wasn't just about the money or the recognition. It was for the family he loved. He knew finding balance would be difficult, but he was more determined than ever to make it work. Ethan spent the next few days trying to keep the promise he made to Lisa and Emily. Even as his work responsibilities grew, he began to organize his time better to ensure that his family was not left aside. He realized that small actions, like having dinner with them or taking Emily for a bike ride, made all the difference. "It's good to see you home, Ethan," Lisa said one night as she prepared dinner. "You don't know how much this means to us." "It means a lot to me too, Mom," he replied, helping her place the dishes on the table. "I don't want us to miss this." Meanwhile, at work, Carter's trust in Ethan continued to grow. He began to involve him in even bigger projects, often giving him autonomy to make important decisions. "You have instinct, Ethan," Carter said during one meeting. "It is rare to find someone with your dedication and vision. Keep it up, and you will go far." Ethan was proud of what he was achieving, but he couldn't ignore the looks of some colleagues who seemed increasingly suspicious. Ryan, in particular, started spreading comments around the office. "Carter has a favorite, and everyone knows who it is," he would tell anyone who would listen. "But let's see how much he can take." Ethan heard these conversations from afar and chose not to respond. He knew that actions spoke louder than words. However, the tension in the office was palpable, and he felt he would need to face it at some point. At home, Emily seemed happier. She loved showing Ethan the places she rode her bike and always asked him questions about his work. "Will you become a boss one day?" she asked as she pedaled alongside him. "Who knows, Em?" Ethan replied with a smile. "But for now, I just want to do my best." Lisa, on the other hand, was calmer. With Ethan's salary increase, she was able to alleviate some of the bills, which brought some peace to the small apartment. However, she still kept an eye on her son. "Don't forget to take care of yourself, Ethan," she said one night, as they drank coffee in the living room. "You are doing a lot, but no one can carry it all alone." "I know, Mom," he replied sincerely, "and I promise that if it gets too heavy, I will ask for help." The real test came when Carter asked Ethan to lead the negotiation of a contract with a strategic client. It was the kind of opportunity that could cement his career, but it also meant weeks of intense work. "I trust you, Ethan," said Carter as he delivered the details of the project. "You have everything you need to make this happen." Ethan immersed himself in his work, but this time with more balance. He shared tasks with the team, asked Josh for advice, and made a point of setting aside a few nights to spend time at home with Lisa and Emily. Even in the hardest moments, he remembered why he was fighting. On the day of the final client presentation, Ethan was nervous but prepared. He led the meeting with confidence, answering difficult questions and presenting clear solutions. When the contract was finalized, Carter stood up and shook his hand firmly. "You did it, Ethan," he said. "This is an important milestone not only for the company, but for your career." When Ethan came home that night, he brought a surprise. A box of pizza, something Emily had been asking for months. "Pizza!" she shouted, jumping for joy. Lisa laughed as Ethan placed the box on the table. "You didn't need that, Ethan," she said, but her smile showed how much it meant. "Today was a special day, Mom," he replied, "and I wanted to share that with you." As they ate together, laughing and telling stories, Ethan realized something important. True success wasn't just about work or achievements. It was about having the people he loved by his side and creating memories that would last forever. That night, as Emily slept and Lisa rested on the couch, Ethan looked out the window of the small apartment. Life wasn't perfect yet, but he knew he was on the right path. And for the first time, he felt that balance between his dreams and his family was possible. The following months were transformative for Ethan and his family. The contract he had won cemented his position in the company, and Mr. Carter made it clear that Ethan was not just an employee, he was a valued partner. "Ethan, you have something special," Carter said one day as they drank coffee in his office. "I see in you a born leader, and this is just the beginning." Ethan was grateful, but deep down he knew there was still a lot to do. He wasn't just building his career, he was rebuilding his family's life. With his new position, he was able to not only pay off his outstanding bills, but also make improvements to the small apartment they called home. That night, as he set up a new dining table in the living room, with Emily helping hold the tools, Lisa watched him with eyes full of pride. "You gave us something we haven't had in a long time, Ethan," she said. "Security, peace." Emily, always cheerful, interrupted, "And now we have a new table to eat pizza together." Everyone laughed, and Ethan felt the warmth of being surrounded by his family in his chest. He knew that this moment was the true reward for all the effort. At work, Ethan continued to gain space and respect. Even those who once doubted him began to recognize his value. Ryan, who had spent so much time teasing him, approached him one day in the hallway. "Hey, Ethan," he began, a little awkwardly. "I wanted to say I was wrong about you. You really deserved all of this." Ethan just smiled and replied, "Thanks, Ryan. The important thing is that we are all here for the same goal." But he knew that true recognition came from the people who really mattered. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan took Lisa and Emily to a park. It was a simple but special day, with laughter and relaxed conversations. As Emily raced her new bike, Lisa turned to Ethan. "I know the road hasn't been easy," she said. "But you achieved something that few can do. You changed the course of our lives without losing who you are." Ethan looked at her, moved. "I did this for us, Mom. It was always for you." That night, as she put Emily to bed, she held her hand and said, "You're my superhero, Ethan. But you know, superheroes need to rest too." He laughed and kissed her forehead. "You're right, Em. I will remember that." Back in the living room, he sat at the table with Lisa. The apartment felt cozier than ever, and he knew that despite the challenges ahead, they were ready to face them together. And so Ethan showed us that, with dedication, love for family, and a heart willing to help, it is possible to transform even the most difficult situations. If you liked this exciting story, be sure to check out more stories like this on our channel, True Impressive Stories. We have incredible stories waiting for you, full of lessons and inspiring moments. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.